Welcome back. You tune into Inspired Afternoons with me, Mariam Mia. And now it's time for our hashtag segment. And did you know? And today we're going to know and we're going to learn, and thereafter we will know all about conveyancing and notaries. So many times, I mean, we see attorneys here, and I think afterwards we see in terms of, you know what, they are conveyancers, or when you're selling houses, buying and selling houses, you go to the process of the estate agent telling you the conveyancing attorney will contact you and that. But actually, what what is the processes of in terms of conveyancing, as well as when certain time you need the assistance of an attorney that specializes in notarial work, and what is that? So I'm so pleased today to educate us and inform us everything regarding this aspect of law of conveyancing and notaries. We have a senior conveyancer. It's attorney Salma Leclaire. She's from Leclaire Attorneys. She's a director of she says a small law firm based in Emirentia, but I think small means personalized because that is her motto. The motto of the law firm is personalized service. And the reason why it's emphasis on personalized service, because as opposed to major law firms, where you generally, I think your first contact and throughout that, your correspondence will mostly be with secretaries or your paralegals. At a small law firm, Salma's motto is she's there directly for her clients in terms of correspondence, speaking to them, advising them, guiding them. I know sometimes an attorney is a counselor as well, because she's counseling the clients. She's laughing because she does a fair but of counseling and getting clients, because when you're dealing with legal things, it's really stressful. From a counselor point of view, I can tell you, when you speak about lawyers and stress and anxiety goes together. So she does fair bit of calming down and counseling her clients as well. And I think that is the difference in terms of having a personal relationship with your attorney and when you're engaging a big law firm as well. So let me welcome Attorney Salma Lakul to Inspired Afternoons. Assalamu alaikum and welcome, Salma.
Alaikum salam. Fine, thanks, Mariam. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, and yourself. So please, our this segment is all about education and informing us. So we have varied topics across the board. We learn everything from gardening to we had the other day orthomolecular therapy. So it just increases our knowledge and understanding. And normally I mean, there's many facets of law, corporate law, criminal law, things like that. But I think for day to day, unless you're really in a legal tangle, and that the type of law or type of law that you specialize in terms of notary work and conveyancing is the type of work that we probably will require in our day to day functioning. So, can you break it down or sort the idiot's guide to understanding what is conveyancing, as well as when you do notary work, what does that entail?
Okay, so with the conveyancing, it's basically we deal with transferring of houses. We are specialized in this field. We write a specialized exam, and we are the only ones who can appear at the deeds registry and register your transfer on your behalf. And a normal attorney can't do that. You have to have this exam, and you have to have this specialization in order to do it. So we deal with the legal basis of every aspect that about buying and selling of the house. So, people always get us involved after the offer to purchase. But myself, I like to get involved before, when you are already considering buying the house. I prefer that if people know me, just to give me a call and say, I'm about to do an offer to purchase, what do I look out for? And there's certain things that you need to look out for. I like to tell my sellers, do a full disclosure list. Make sure, if you have a scratch on a wall, a hinge issue, whatever, disclose it, because then only when you sell the property is the property bought footstoods. Everybody's like, oh, and the property is bought footstoods, and people found this and people found that. If the seller has knowledge of such defects, sells it, does not disclose it, he is liable for it. So sellers, they always fall onto this is property sold footstoods, and we don't have to be liable for repairs, but legally you are. So if you disclose it and you've signed the offer to purchase with the disclosure sheet, which is a very good thing for sellers to have, it ensures that when the purchase has been to the house and everything has been disclosed, that is now really footstoods. He can't come back and say a tile didn't have grouting, this didn't have, certain issues. They always, I had
Do
an
you
issue
have
where
issues like that? Now you say,
the
you
client
say
said,
you told me.
well, one was a bit ridiculous, but they said there was too many ants on the property. But, and we don't, in Johannesburg, there's no termite or border certificate required. In Johannesburg, the certificates that are required are electrical compliance, gas, if you have it on the premises, and an electrical fence if you are in a freestanding house. So, I like that to be very clear. In the one thing sellers also need to do is to make sure when they hire the electrician, these are the things that you need to look for. Make sure it's an accredited electrician, because the comeback is directly to you with your electrician. They'll go to the electrician's board and report the electrician if he's not correct. But ultimately, because of the offer to purchase saying the seller will use an accredited electrician for the electrical compliance, it's important that they do follow that, because the comeback is to the seller. And, eventually you'll have to do another clearance certificate and compliance certificate, which could cost even more, So those are the things you need to look out for. The normal costs that are involved in conveyancing for the seller, let's just talk about the seller for now, is that he needs to know before he sells his property, does he have enough money to sell his property? It's always funny because you always think you're going to make money, but in order to make the money, you have to
I was
spend the
actually
money.
thinking, I'm thinking now, what is Salma speaking about, that do I have enough money if I would like to sell my property? Because I know there's a lot of focus on the buyer, and I'm so pleased that we're focusing on the responsibility as a seller, because like you say, it could delay or affect the sale of a property if you did not disclose defects that you were aware of. And I mean, certain visible defects, you can't say I didn't see it, especially if you're living on the property. You can
Exactly.
plead ignorance. I'm sure, is ignorance a defense? I don't think it's
No,
a valid
it's not
defense.
a difference. No.
Okay, so what do you mean? Can you just qualify that statement that as a seller, you must ensure that you have enough money to sell a property?
Okay, so what it means is we apply as attorneys, as conveyancers, we apply for clearance figures. If you're living on a freestanding house, this only entails rates clearance figures from from the relevant council, City of Johannesburg, City of Tshwane. Each one of them have different rules. City of Johannesburg is by far the most, I would say, expensive, because they actually want you to clear your property for almost up to 3 to 4 months in order to issue the certificate. And the seller is liable to clear for the 4 months, pay it in advance, obtain the certificate, and once we register, then go to the council, close off his account, and apply for the refund. This is quite a strenuous and arduous process for the seller. We try to help them by, giving them consultants that we know could assist them to make the process a bit faster. But so imagine if you have rates at your house at about 3,000-4,000 rand, rates, electricity. They do a future projection for the next 3 months. So it's your current plus 3 months. So if you're sitting at 3,000-4,000 rand a month, you may need to have 12 to 16,000 rand available to clear your property for rates. And this is all the burden that you have to bear. And then there's also, if you're living in a complex, there's levy clearances or homeowners association clearances, which work a little, well, it's not as expensive, I would say, depending on the association or the body corporate, but you can clear them only for 1 month. You don't have to do it for a long month. If you envision that your property is transferring by the 31st of August, you can apply in July and say, I'd like it only cleared until the 31st of August. So those are the expenses. And another thing is, if you have a current bond on your property, the seller is liable for the bond attorney's cancellation costs. So even if your bond is paid up, everybody goes to me, my bond's paid up, it's fine. I'm like, do you have the title deed? Paid up doesn't mean cancelled. Always remember that. Paid up means, yes, you've paid it up, they can release the title deed, but have you instructed the bank that you want to cancel your bond? If you haven't, the title deed is still sitting with the bond, and they have to appoint a panel attorney to cancel the bond on their behalf, and the seller is liable for those costs.
And I didn't even know that because that's what I said. Alhamdulillah, we say finally we've paid the bond, and you had it. Sure, your sigh of relief. You still have to pay the bank again. And what does something like that cost, Salma, in terms of a cancellation of a bond?
Depending on how many bonds you cancel, it can come up to, it starts at about 3,500 to 6,500 rand.
As much as that.
Depending on which attorneys. The bigger you must pray that you get one of the small, medium-sized attorneys that charge like up to 4,000 rand. But if you get the big firms, they can charge up to 6, because obviously their overheads are much more, and they have to load documents in a different way. So they're quite more. I'm not a penal attorney, so I can't exactly tell you what their costs are. But it runs.
Okay, let me ask you this question. So penal attorney is an attorney that probably, I'm just assuming the bank would appoint these attorneys to act on their behalf. And then we will liaise with them. So basically the bank will facilitate all this. We just have to give the cash and pay for this whole process.
We, the transferring attorney, is the driver in the process. We will liaise with the cancellation attorneys on your behalf. They don't even contact you. They contact me. Tell me what I need. I need your guarantees. I need this. I need you to make sure that, the bond is going to be settled when we transfer this property. I need you to make sure your client pays the costs, etc. And I need to make sure the client has given you the relevant FICA. Everybody forgets that the seller also needs to provide proper FICA to the cancellation attorneys. And the cancellation attorneys have very strict FICA rules. You need to follow it perfectly. So the seller, if he's selling, make sure you've got your proof of residence, your income tax number, your marital certificates, if applicable, and your ID in proper form. Because a lot of people say to me, I don't know where's my nikah certificate. I don't know. I need it. The thing is, we need it. It's not that we're being difficult or we're making extra rules. This is the laws of the country. FICA is the law of the country. We have to follow same.
Okay, so Salma, this another thing I wasn't even I wasn't even aware of this, and like you said, that rates probably 3 months would be about 12,000 rand. Then this bond cancellation, say roughly about 5,000.
Yeah. If your monthly amount,
no, I'm just putting it there.
Yeah. Then it's times
right,
3.
And then now the second. Now you're saying this FICA. So you, in order to obtain a tax clearance certificate, whatever taxes, it will have to be up to date. Because if you're owing SARS something for tax, they're not going to issue you a clearance certificate.
It's called a transfer duty receipt. And generally, we load your income tax number on there, and they will then issue the assessment, etc. If your taxes, it's not, generally, if your taxes are really in bad order, then they ask us to make sure that certain amounts are plain. They even may issue us with an order to say that on transfer, you make sure that the back taxes are paid from the proceeds before you pay the client. SARS has done that before. Okay, so that's another pitfall we have to look at as a seller. So make sure your taxes are cleared before you transfer your property.
Yeah, I thought it was a simple thing, and I think everybody already decides what they're going to use when they utilize the funds on the sale of a property, and you're already planning your trips or buying a beach house or something like this. But whoa, you have to really factor in this. Yeah, I'm laughing because that's what I was intending. If I'm going to sell this year, this is what I do with the income that I generated from a sale of a property. But these are all definite. Any other pitfalls related to a seller?
Also, try and disclose your rates and levies to your client. If you don't, to your purchaser. If you don't, the purchaser doesn't understand the cost that is involved in. I had a deal where an agent did not give the levies and rates to the buyer, and he was the first-time buyer. He didn't understand anything. And when I told him that, this is going to be, you're going to have a rates clear. I know that they're supposed to know all about that. You have to pay rates to the council. But, it isn't always so evident to everybody. They think, I'm buying the house. They don't realize there's additional costs involved. So when he realized he had to be qualified for bond of whatever, he didn't actually have the money to pay the rates and taxes. And his affordability was, even though the bank had given him the bond, he knew he wouldn't able to, without defaulting in a few months, able to pay for the rates and levies because it wasn't disclosed to him prior. So, if you are an estate agent, I always ask them to please put your rates and levy statements with them so they know what their projected incomes are. I know estate agents must be saying, we do that. But it's not always evident, especially when you're new estate agents and you're learning, you don't always do that. And that can cause the deal to fall through. And then that's harmful for the seller.
Okay. This is really, really valuable advice. Now, in terms of, let's move on to the purchaser or the buyer. Yeah. Okay. So what was the correct term? Buyer or purchaser?
Purchaser, buyer, whatever. Layman's terms is fine.
Okay. All right. So when we're purchasing a house, what do we, because remember, the seller appoints a conveyancer. Am I correct in that understanding?
Right. Yes. So in Gauteng, the seller appoints a conveyancer because we have to make sure we get the money for the seller. We actually secure the money for the seller. I would say all attorneys would do that, even the purchasers conveyancing, if the purchaser appoints. But the point being, I don't want to say this about all the legal fraternity, but we've had some issues where clients have taken from trust monies, etc. So if it's the seller's attorney, he has sort of peace of mind because when the seller says, I've got the guarantees, they're in hand, or I've got the purchase price, they're in my trust account, that it's actually there. It's not the purchaser's attorney saying, okay, let's just transfer the price. There's no money. And in the end, what's your recourse once the thing is transferred? That is why I would think the Law Society says, let the seller appoint the attorney because he looks after the seller's interest. However, we do have to be neutral. So we do advise the purchaser as well, in all regards and assist, with all his queries. It's not like we only worry about the seller.
Yeah, so you have a relationship with both parties, yes. In concluding the sale and collecting the funds thereafter, making sure.
We can't have bias to the seller.
Okay, so now if you are a purchaser, besides, you might think you negotiated a really, really good deal on a purchase of a premises or property, whatever. But like you say, besides the actual purchase price, there are a lot cost. So there's a cost involved, and it could then inflate the cost of the actual purchase to about 20 to 30% if you look at the additional costs associated with the purchase of property. Am I correct in my assumption there?
Yeah. So I would say the purchaser really needs to see what is the cost of owning the property. It's so important to know, okay, I've got a bond of 10,000 Rand. I actually have rates of 3,000 Rand. I have, if I'm in a complex, levies of 2,000 Rand. Every month, I need to ensure that there's 15,000 Rand in my account to make sure all the debit orders or however you pay it go off and you have that. You can't only think about affordability in terms of what you've got. These are additional expenses to everything, to owning a house, as we all know. But, some purchases are away, some are not. The costs for purchasing the actual property, right now it's 0 to 1 million, the threshold. So there's no transfer duty. And that's always the case. Whenever we say there's no transfer duty, purchasers think there's no transfer costs. They're like, oh, there's no transfer duty. There's no transfer costs. I'm like, no, there is transfer duty, but there's no transfer duty. But the attorney will charge you the costs for doing the transfer because, of course, there's work to be carried out. We obtain an exemption receipt from SARS. We still get the rates. We still get the levy clearances. We still process the transfer as normal. The only thing is you don't have to pay SARS transfer duty. Over the million, then it works on the calculation, which you can get on the SARS website. Also, if you're looking for transfer costs, everybody phones me for transfer costs, but there's so many apps that are available online. So if you, Miriam, want to buy a property for over 1,200,000 and she can't get a hold of Salma on a Sunday, perhaps, just by off chance, you can put it on an app. Your transfer costs 2020. It must be 2020 because every year our transfer costs change. And then you just have to add and follow one of those apps, and they'll actually tell you what your estimated bond and transfer costs are. The seller, the purchaser, is not only paying the transferring attorney's costs, he's also paying, if he's registering a bond attorney's costs. So he has two costs to look out for, which is quite a pricey affair. So he needs to also make sure when he's buying a house, in addition to securing the bond, having a deposit, that he needs to have money for transfer costs and bond costs. Everybody forgets the bond cost as well. They always think it's just transfer costs. So that's another aspect that the buyers need to look at.
So you pay to register your bond, and then you pay to deregister your bond if you're taking a loan.
Yeah, the banks are good, eh?
Yes, I'm just realizing that you damn both ways and you're condemned both ways. Okay, so money for the actual purchase of the property, funds to ensure that if it's over $1 million, that goes to SARS in terms of transfer duties. The fees to conveyancing fees, bond registration fees, and then tell me in terms of well, you work with City of Johannesburg, so you'd know that is there a deposit that you need to then, besides opening up an account for rates and taxes, does City of Johannesburg or any other municipality require you to pay a deposit that they hold, the holding deposit?
Yes, since a few years ago, City of Johannesburg suspended the actual going in and paying a deposit. They just add it on to your new statement once you open the account. So your first rates account will be lovely. It will be like maybe a 2,500 deposit plus your usage, etc. So you may be hit for the first month with quite a big bill because it includes your deposit. But they don't physically, before they physically wanted you to go in and pay a deposit on the property, but it doesn't work like that anymore. Swani, I'm not so sure. Yeah.
No. Nonetheless, you need to then set aside some funds for this deposit as well. Yeah. Okay. No. Just so that like you're aware in terms of that first month, and that's why I love what you said earlier on in terms of your finances. You need to actually work out if you are able to own a house before you, as opposed to purchasing a house. And also look at the moment of COVID. You need to also understand that are you able to pay your bond for at least 2 months in the unlikely event if something like this happens? Who would have thought 2020? Yes, I mean, we didn't realize earlier. So every month, because you have a steady income, you're able to meet your commitments. But if something happens to you and you're unable to meet your commitments, at least you need to factor out that you have some money in a saving somewhere that will help you for 2 months then until you decide what is your plan of action. So it's important when we're budgeting and planning, we need to factor in all these costs, unforeseen costs.
100%. And Miriam, the one thing I want to tell all the sellers, buyers, whatever, read your contract, read your obligations, read and understand. Take 10 minutes to call someone who may, be a conveyancer, a friend. But if you don't understand something, but read, because afterwards, when you say you didn't understand that this was your obligation, it's too late. You've signed it. And that happens like in cash deals, etc., where the people don't read that the deposit will be not refundable because it's a cash deal, because there's no suspensive conditions involved. Suspensive conditions mean there was a bond coming into play. If you didn't have a bond, it'd come in. So people with cash deals think they can just pull out, even after the deposit is paid. A cash deal is almost binding as soon as the deposit is in. So, read, make sure you can change your conditions. You don't have to follow the OTP, but you can negotiate. So speak to the agent. If there's no agent, speak to your seller, buyer. But everything's online now. A little bit of a Google search, you'll find out your transfer costs, you find out everything, you find out the basis, you even find out how it works. But clients don't want to read. So that's my biggest advice. You need to read. Your lawyers will help you so much, but your understanding has to be from you. And what you don't understand, you have to come to your attorney and say, I don't understand this clause. Help me through it. But that's the biggest thing. Clients don't read. And then they sign and it comes to us and it's too late. They're bound by the contract.
So we need to, no, it's important. And look, you know what? Reading is an Islamic concept. That was the first word that was revealed, was ikra. Read. And like you say, reading is empowering, because I know what the taxman in the legal fraternity going to court, ignorance is not a defense. I even when you get stuck with JMPD, you say, "Oh, but I didn't know." Then they tell you, you know what? Ignorance is no defense. So basically, you need to be empowered and you need to read. So
Exactly.
this has been really, really informative and educational because I know lots of due to the COVID situation, many sellers are forced to sell their properties because they cannot meet their payment obligations in it. So, like they say, currently it's a seller's market, and those that have extra funds to invest are looking for bargains. But the thing is, like you say, in your haste or excitement to purchase a really good property at a price that maybe last year wouldn't have been affordable to you, in your haste like this, you might just get excited that you didn't know
So
what yeah,
Afzal Nur
all these
Mohammed
particulars.
asking us a
I've got
question. What do we mean by
yes, I've
guarantee?
got yeah. So what do you
So
mean by
also,
guarantees?
so if you're the purchaser and you have, say, you're having a bond, you take a bond from the bank and it's a full bond. Bank's attorneys, the bond attorneys, actually provide the transferring attorney with a guarantee that says on due date or on transfer date, this we will ensure the guarantees are paid out. It's all done electronically, so we have to ensure that we get those guarantees. You could call it in the old days, it's almost like a check, but it's much more secure. So it's all done electronically. We get the guarantee that says, okay, I've secured 2,350,000 rand for my purchase price on transfer. Smith attorneys will then ensure that this payment is made. If they don't pay out in the guarantee, it's a legal document which I can sue against. So we're just securing that for our seller as that's a guarantee. And if you put cash into the transferring attorney's account, then she has to also then issue guarantees if there is a bond that needs to be cancelled to the next attorney, which is the bond cancellation attorneys. So guarantees are very important in the whole process. It's actually the purchase price that we're securing.
Okay. Thank you, Afzal, for that question because really that was a very good question because I also didn't understand all the legal jargon that's happening. But really, Salma, I thank you because you really gave us both perspective in terms of obligations and related cost as well as pitfalls to look out for from there. I've got Amy Baruji saying thank you, Salma Leclaire. Was very informative. So I think I've learned a lot, and my listeners agree, and all our Facebook viewers that we've been informed. What we're going to do is I'm going to get you on another segment because we've run out of time. I would like to discuss all the notaries and all those documents we need to sign
Yeah.
and things like that. So
Okay. No
let's do
problem.
this. Next month, please, if you can avail yourself, and let's continue in this because I think, you know what? We really require this information and this type of information because people will think conveyancing boring subject we don't, but at some time in our life as well we are going to be a purchaser or we're going to be a seller, or even in
Yeah.
terms of the next time when I speak to you. Before that, I'd like to also just discuss in terms of rentals, because
Yes.
if you don't own a house, you're going to be renting. And in terms of for somebody that's renting, they fill in the standard rental document, but again you need to read some things there.
Yes,
And then
definitely. No, I'd
also
love
I
to
think
talk to you about
sometimes, yes, I'd like to do that. And I know sometimes if you are an owner of a property and my good friend, attorney Salma Leclaire, wants to then stay there, and I'll think, she's my friend. So she'll just pay me my rent and we'll go there. What's a document amongst friends? But I think a lot of people, especially those who rent out their properties, they rent it to colleagues or family members that they know. And then maybe 5 months down the line, a family member or friend cannot pay the rent, and then what
exactly.
recourse you have because you don't even have a proper contract. It was just a verbal contract, which would mean something, but it's just not, I think, valid
It's
in
not
terms
easy
of
to act
taking further.
upon. It's not easy. A verbal contract's not easy to act upon. You can, but it's not easy to act upon. It
So
just makes the
yeah,
work
so
much
I'd like to get you on maybe
no
next
problem.
month or so, and then we can just discuss rental contracts and agreements and possible pitfalls to look after. There are also related costs in terms of you renting a property. It's not just the rental amount, but the additional
Exactly.
cost, as well
Yeah.
as then we can discuss some notaries. What we are going to do is we're going to be putting up Attorney Salma Leclaire's contact details on our social media pages shortly. So if anybody would like to contact Salma for their personal service and advice and just the legal counseling, you will be able to contact her, and inshallah we are going to speak to you in the future
Ameen.
with regard to that. But shukran so much for
Thanks,
joining us.
Mariam.
It's been
Okay.
educational and informative, and yes, now you know about conveyancing because this was our Did You Know segment. Assalamu alaikum wa
Walaikum
rahmatullahi wa
salam.
barakatuh.
Thanks, Mariam.
I mean, we're going to go for a short break and then looking forward to speaking to Mumtaz Ghani regarding biokinetics. And this is treatment for post-COVID patients. So, yes, a need for in terms of your rehabilitation, especially if you were hospitalized and you were on a ventilator uh, because of breathing difficulties. Biokinetics can help you in terms of your recovery. So let's learn all about that after the break.